Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have you on our show for the first episode of PVC Industry Talks. Hi, Andrew. Nice
Hi
to
there.
meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jay.
So we have Andrew, who is the Director of Product at Zynga, who is here with us for our very first episode of PVC Industry Talks. We're extremely happy because we don't just have a product manager, we have a Director of Product. So it's going to give you some really insightful stuff we're going to learn from our conversations today. And before we get started, for those of you who are new to our show, who don't know about us, my name is Jay, and I'm part of the Product Vision Club at Waterloo. We're now being called UWPM. We are a product community that hosts workshops, seminars, and events for students to learn the skills that it takes to break into product management and to learn more about the product management industry. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our website at productvisionclub.com. Okay, Andrew, so
Sweet.
let's start. I want to know more about you.
Okay. What do you want me to start somewhere at the beginning?
I mean, wherever you think is awesome, yeah.
Sure. I did not get into product management right off the bat. I did a business degree out of McGill. I did not know what to do with myself, so went into management consulting because that's what one does out of their business degree when they don't know what to do with themselves. Did that for a few years. Same sort of thing, didn't know what to do with myself all over again. So I went to do my MBA. I moved to London and did it there at London Business School. After that, I still wasn't quite sure what to do with myself, but I knew I wanted to work in media and tech, which is pretty much the most vague thing you could ever say, because media and tech cover everything. When you start to break it down, banks call themselves technology companies now. I mean, media and tech is everything. So I was like, sweet. So I did my internship at Google, which everyone is like, oh, that's amazing, that's awesome, you get to work at Google. Google was pretty amazing, but it wasn't the right fit for me. I was pretty far removed from sort of the cool stuff they were doing, and I realized I needed to be sort of in the fun. So I said, cool, I'm going to do TV or video games. I started to narrow it down. So I went to work for BBC Worldwide, which is the commercial arm of the British broadcaster. So they basically try to make money from all the content that's made out of the BBC. And so that was interesting, but it's too slow moving. So I was like, whoa, this is not hands-on, this is not causing impact. Like, maybe industry is not the exact thing I need to be thinking about. Maybe, hey, you know what job family, job function is. And that's where I was like, oh, product management. So it took, I guess, 7, 8 years of my career before I realized there was sort of an opportunity to sort of find this intersection of having immediate hands-on impact, doing interesting analytic work, creative work, sort of all coming together. And so I said, I'm gonna do product management, which is a pretty vague thing to do. So I sort of worked my butt off. I got a job offer from EA to join in London. The studio there closed before my job started, so they rescinded said offer. So I sort of scrambled one more time, and I got a different offer to join what was then a startup in Los Angeles called Scopely. They're now a very large organization, and so I spent 3 years at Scopely. I moved back to Toronto, and I joined the Score, which is a mobile sports organization based out of here in Toronto. And then just last year, I decided to leave the Score, and I came to join Zynga, because at that point I sort of loved the product, but I realized games were my fit versus the Score, which is more of a sort of sports and news content, less so on the sort of engagement game side. So that's my spiel. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So you've been around, you've
Yeah.
tried a lot of different stuff.
I have jumped ship a few times, yes.
Wow, that's very cool. So tell me, your undergrad degree was in marketing, or?
I did a Bachelor of Commerce. I majored in marketing, and I had McGill has these weird things called concentrations. They're slightly less than a minor.
Right.
I had a concentration in information systems and in, what was the exact term? It's something like HR related. Let's just call it human resources.
Right.
Or behavior, something like that.
Cool. So you
So
had
not tech at all.
Yeah.
Fully removed.
no tech. So when you were in school, you were not thinking tech.
Well, I mean, the information systems piece had some tech.
Right.
But it was more on like thinking about how data is sort of archived and organized and how you might access it. Like we would some of the courses were very set up on like how would you build relational tables. So it's like, I'm gonna have a primary key here, and I'm gonna link it to this on the other
Right.
primary key, yay!
Right.
So not so much thinking through, let's say, coding and building.
Right.
Yeah.
So was like the BBC and Google like your first eye-opening experiences to get like hands-on tech experience?
Yes, if you think like hardcore tech experience working in sort of companies that have engineers working all the time.
Right.
When I was in consulting for 4 years, I spent Monitor Group, they're now Monitor, Deloitte, had they called it 50-50 model. You worked on 2 projects at a time, and 50% of my time was always devoted to a media or a tech organization.
Right.
So I started to get a lot of exposure to it there. And so we were working with a lot of sort of Canadian newspapers and television organizations who, this would now be like 15 years ago, were faced with a decline and being upset by sort of and disrupted by the internet models. So there was a lot of thinking about what was happening there. So it was like exposure to, let's call it strategic tech thinking, not tactical
Right.
thinking of tech.
Right. Interesting. So you got a good sense of what it is you wanted to do. So once you entered product management, you realized, hey, I really like this gig. It sounds fun. I like what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear from day like 2 that I was pretty excited. Yeah, I mean, day 1, it's like you go and you're like, wow, this is crazy. I mean, I was just excited because I'd moved to LA and I had been working at BBC Worldwide, which is like, I don't know, it's very British. It's very, very British. It's really the only way to describe it.
Right.
And so the Scopely at the time was in like this like all cement office, and everybody got their toys around, and there's Nerf guns everywhere. I mean, it was like that stereotypical scene. And somebody gave me a card that said like "Buckle up, Buttercup," which is just like the funniest thing ever. And so, yeah, the first things they were like, "Hey, you're gonna take on these products. They're slowly fading, but you're gonna try and make as much money as you can from them, and you'll do that for 6 months, and you'll learn the ropes." I was like, "Okay, sweet, cool. What next?" And then I figured it out.
Wow.
So it was pretty exciting on that front.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
you were in Los Angeles for
I was.
Scopely?
Yeah, for Scopely.
So
I was.
Los Angeles, California. So what was it like in California?
Warm. California, I mean, Los Angeles is different than San Francisco, right? It's
Okay.
different than, let's say, San Diego, where there's another tech scene. It is like a media epicenter, right? That's where the film and industry is focused, film and movie industry. So you see a lot of access of that and influence on that in the technology scene, which is why I say Scopely's sort of very established models is take very good IP. Let's call it, they recently released Star Trek, or they had Looney Tunes, or Wheel of Fortune, or Walking Dead, or WWE, and pair it with sort of a game genre that makes sense for that IP.
Interesting.
And so being in Los Angeles, you have direct access, direct lines of communication into that, so it makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. Wow. So from California, then you hear about the score, or was it something in between?
My wife took a job. I wanted to move back to Canada. My wife and I did. So my wife took a job here, so I moved back with her. I was commuting back and forth to Los Angeles for like 5 months, I want to say. But was just not a recipe for success. On multiple fronts. One is I've got 2 kids. That doesn't work well with them.
Wow.
2 is like product management is yeah, you can theoretically do it remotely. There are spectrums of product management. There are different types. The type that sort of mobile game companies do is hands-on, and it works better when the person is present. So it wasn't working for my family. I think I wasn't doing as well as I could have because I was working remote, and so something had to give.
Right.
And fortunately, a role came up at the Score, which I applied for. They were building a fantasy sports game, and they needed somebody with mobile games experience, which was me. So I was their chupacabra. It was pretty good.
Nice. And like
Yeah.
you've been in Toronto ever since?
This was in 2015, 16, somewhere around there. So I was in Toronto for 4 years out of my undergrad, then went to Los Angeles started London for 3, then Los Angeles for 3, and then I've been here since then.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you've been a lot of places.
That's the skipping route. Yeah. So now I'm gonna be here for a little while.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's the plan. You got the kids. You want to settle down
Yeah,
too.
there's no more need to move. I mean, Toronto's is a major tech hub.
Right.
It will continue to be because our salary costs are significantly lower, and there's access to wonderful talent
Yeah.
from Waterloo amongst many other schools. So it's I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. You're going to see a lot more companies moving here, establishing shop.
Oh yeah, we've definitely seen that with like Pinterest, Microsoft, and some big name companies
Right.
making shop here, right? So it's more about get the compensation up so more people can come in.
But then if the compensation goes up, then you're not going to be as fully competitive.
Right,
so it's
right,
like there's like a fine line to hit.
Yeah,
So,
totally
yeah.
understand. And I like love the place. I love the city of Toronto. It's awesome. The people, the culture, the amount of diversity that you get that you don't really get in other places.
Yep.
And it's a really awesome place to, I'd say, innovate too.
True.
Right? Not a lot of people would think about that, but yeah. So, talking about product management, I'm pretty sure the people watching may already have an understanding what product management is and what it's like for a product manager, what it does on a day-to-day. So let's get an understanding of what you do as a director of product.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably take a step back on that and
Sure.
say, like, what's the ultimate goal here? I can't remember who wrote it, but it's a lovely way, I think, to encapsulate product management. It's like shipping the right product to the right people at the right time. And that sentence seems really simple, but if you kind of unpack the details of it, it makes a lot of sense. Like the right product, so you have to find the right product market fit, the right people, right? Same product market fit, but you have to understand your customers, you have to understand who they are. If there's multiple sort of steps to that, you need to unpack that. And then the right time is also just making the right prioritization things, because coming up with ideas and planning, it's pretty easy, frankly. Saying we should do this is, I mean, you can see that in the peanut galleries. You go to any sports game and you can hear somebody being like, "Yo, bum, like, you shouldn't have drafted so-and-so." It's very easy to be in the stands.
Right.
It's very hard to be on the ground to make choices. So that right product, right people, right time is all about putting those together in the right order. So my time is spent on that layer. Now I have PMs on each of the teams that I work on, so a lot of my time is spent getting them to think through that. To say, like, why are you doing these things? Why are you doing it now? And down we go. So on a day-to-day, I'd say 50% of my time is in meetings, because I'm meeting with different stakeholders. I'm meeting with PMs. I'm meeting with both upwards and downwards stakeholders, and making sure that everything is moving in the right order, or asking questions. The primary question is why. Like, why are we doing this? Why? Like endless whys.
Right.
Until I feel confident that we are sort of moving in a direction that everybody is comfortable with and believe is the right one. And then other 50% of my time is sort of split between, let's say, analytics and both quantitative and qualitative, to figure out, are we doing the right things, are we asking the right questions, and what are the answers to those questions that we're getting back. So, like, if we're running an A/B test, what are the results looking like?
Right.
Why are we seeing it this way versus that way? Why was our hypothesis wrong? Why was it not wrong? Like, what came out of the information that we're getting, and how is that going to change that roadmap or those whys that we had set before?
Right. So it sounds like the experiences you've had as a product manager before really helped you to get like an intuition or some kind of toolkit that you use now to say, hey, I've seen something like this before, so now I can make the strategic decisions behind it too, right?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there is it's a hard one. I mean, people have said there's product intuition. There is like a general like sense of it, but I'm not convinced that product intuition isn't already present in everybody. It's just something that you can nurture and grow with, where it's that gut feel where you're like, that's just not going to work.
Right.
It's dangerous to rely on it all the time, though.
Right,
You should
right,
still
right.
marry that with your quant and qualitative data that you're getting through. But yes, there is a intuition that comes over time where you're like, this works. For me, it's more so on the games front,
Right.
because I mean, I love games. That's why I wanted to work in games.
Right.
And now, having worked in the industry for a while now, you begin to know that certain things are not going to work as well,
Right.
particularly for certain genres. So, I mean, at Scopely, I spent 2 years on Wheel of Fortune Free Play, which is a word game. I now work on Words with Friends, Bottle with Friends, and Crosswords with Friends.
Right.
So, I spent a significant portion of my career working on mobile word games, very big mobile word games. So, I have a pretty good sense of what works or might not work, or I can be more refined in that
Mhm.
within that genre.
Cool. So tell me a little bit more about like Zynga, what they do for the people out there who haven't heard. I'm sure it's a huge name, but just a small spiel of what it is you guys do, how much money you guys, how big you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zynga is a mobile, 80% mobile, 20% web games publisher and developer. So we make largely free-to-play games that earn money through ads or in-app purchases. We cover the spectrum of genres, and that is basically us in a nutshell. We are not the we spam your friends days of old that many will remember. We are not the Farmville of yesteryear. We are building products that people want to love and engage with for years. And really the foundation of Zynga is about connecting the world through play. That is its like pinnacle, that's its peak core. Play is a concept that has been around since sort of the 20,000 years, right? There are early sort of things that show people were playing and interacting together, and we are just trying to elevate that with the technology that we have. So that's Zynga at its core. We are worldwide, I think we're about 2,000 people.
Wow.
Revenue-wise, I don't have a number off the top of my head. We're publicly traded though, so it's available. And right now we are doing pretty well. Yeah, our stock price is at a 5-year high, I think, so things are going well. The executive team came in 3 or 4 years ago and turned around an organization that was not in good shape. So they are executing on a plan that is now moving into a growth phase, which is really awesome to be a part of.
Cool. So like here in Toronto, how many people do you have in this office?
There are about 120, I want to say.
Wow.
So again, as part of that growth, I think it was down to 60 3 or 4 years ago, but we have been hiring really rapidly, still hiring. There's a lot of open roles because again, like this is a great hub. There's lots of talent. Salary costs are a little lower,
Right.
and that's kind of the perfect fit. So yeah, we have a number of sort of central teams here. There are 3 sort of wholly staffed game teams here, and then another few other game teams partially supported here.
Cool. So like everyone on a team is working on a specific game, and they have specific targets they need to reach.
For the most part, I mean, like as you go, as you sort of go up the hierarchy, if you will, like you could say the CEO works across all the games,
Right.
right? So as you go up on the hierarchy, the breadth increases. So let's say at a product manager level, they're working on one game, or in the instance of like, say Words with Friends, the sort of main app is actually a very big product. So it has multiple pods in it, and a product manager is assigned to a specific pod. So like I'm focusing on revenue, or I'm focusing on growth, or I'm focusing on, I don't know, crazy ideas, let's call it like innovation.
Cool. Right.
And in that pod is some engineers, a UX person, a producer. Producer is sort of a game term who's same but different as a project manager. And like artist depends on the needs. Same thing with game teams, is like, I don't know, Boggle with Friends has some devs, there's a PM, there's a producer, there's a UX person, an analyst, QA,
Right.
all the way down.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So that's what sounds like one of the benefits of having such a very strong product team, that you're able, and a very strong vision for a product, that a lot of companies have dedicated product managers in every single team, or like they don't really emphasize the importance of making sure that the vision is aligned with the business as well, right? So it definitely sounds like as you go up the hierarchy you were talking about, there's an aligned vision that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about like some stuff that you've learned along the way from your career in product management till now, like general nuggets or small things that you've found really important that you can give to someone who's young, who's just entering the field of product management.
Yeah, let me break that down on a few fronts. I'm gonna go tactical and then not tactical.
Awesome, I love this. Yeah.
Tactical, I'm gonna start from like the getting into the industry perspective. Number 1, don't send me generic cover letters. Number 2, don't send me generic resumes. Number 3 is reach out and talk to as many people as possible. Most people will ignore you and say no, but as you have those conversations, what you'll do is build a vernacular that gives you credibility. So when you go into your next conversation, you can either say, I talked to so-and-so, or I heard this from so-and-so, or you start using the correct terms. So number 4 is read, watch, listen, whatever, consume as much as you possibly can, again, to build that knowledge, so that you're building credibility. Number 5 is if you get an interview, research the crap out of whatever organization you're going into. Use their product. As a product manager, your name is literally product manager. So if you're going an interview for any product role, and that interviewer asks you questions about their product, and you say, no, that's literally an immediate red flag. That ends an interview for me, and I immediately go into end of interview mode. So, and for me, it's even more so because it's like, oh, did you play the game that you're interviewing to be a PM for?
Right.
Oh, no? Great. That's really a sign that you care. So do not do those 5 things. The last one being so critical. I see that very often. And when I say research, I don't mean look at the website. I mean, take the product, say what works, what doesn't. If I was the product manager on this, what would I do and why, and have a very clear path forward for it, because it positions you well to answer any question in the interview. So that's the tactical side. On the just being a good PM, there's an amazing book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. I love that concept. Start with why. If you ask why, you will always be able to get down to the root of why you're doing things. And that start with why works really well because you as a product manager are doing indirect influence. I don't manage engineers, I don't manage UX people, I don't manage QA, I manage none of them, I only manage product people. So I have to convince people about why we need to do things. And the way you do that is starting with why. Lay out the why so that everybody understands and builds up towards it, as opposed to just saying we're gonna do this.
Right.
That always leads to failure, because it makes people unhappy, it makes them feel talked down to, and if you sort of all work together to collectively describe what we're trying to achieve and why, then you come to something that's greater than the parts. So that's the start with why. Number 2, again, it's related to a good book, Growth Mindset. You can always be better. We're not fixed in our skill sets, so we should always be working to improving and mastering our trades. So it's about not saying I have a finite set of brain power or a finite set of skills. It's saying I can be better, I can improve, and that's sort of the other piece of that. So
Awesome. So Andrew Rose's 5 tips to breaking PM in the first part, and then his strategies for success once you land that first interview or gig or whatever.
I hit 5.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. That's pretty stuff that you need to think about when you're trying to apply for a product management role, when you're trying to break into the field, because there's a lot of different types of people who are getting into product management. You have engineers, designers, marketing, business, consulting. There's so many different pathways to get into product management.
That's true.
So I definitely think that what he mentioned in terms of those 5 things should be noted and are very important to get yourself in the door and make yourself relevant.
Yeah, I'd say that there's actually like a 6th which says, the product management industry has changed. And again, there's a spectrum of product, right? Different organizations treat it very differently.
Right.
And so I'd say you need to figure out what type of product management you want to do. That's number 6, and key in on that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because it takes different shades in different organizations. And number 2, the sort of what's number 2 or number 7 is, if you want, is to say, where's I going with this? I'm losing my train of thought. Damn it.
So you were saying, I think I lost.
Yeah, but no, I wanted to key in on that one too. Anyway, let's go back. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
You had another question.
So I was saying, once people get into product management, there's so many different pathways, right? So moreover, you're saying, is it the mindset to being a product manager? Is it about reading that book, or is it more about the hands-on experience you can get in a sense too?
Yes. That was what I wanted to key in on.
Awesome.
Thank you. Good.
Intuition.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, you got it. It is A and B, right? There are a lot of smart people writing about product right now and saying really compelling things.
Mhm.
So product management is a lot about connecting dots, right? You have this piece of information, you have this piece of information, you have this piece of information, and those all sort of need to be brought together to explain the why of what you're doing. It's the very same thing if you look at your own personal self as a product manager. You're saying, I'm going to read this, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to see this, I'm going to connect the dots to make myself better. So with that is, you don't necessarily need to go into a product manager role. You can go into a product analyst role. You can be an engineer. You can do any sort of thing that is tangential and slide your way in, right? All those things are building credibility or building understanding. So I do see a lot of people, particularly people fresh out of their undergrad, being like, I need to be a product manager. And it's like, that's cool, but like, it's become very hard to break into, because it's got this like glorified, it's become almost ridiculous air. Like, this is amazing, you're the CEO of the product. Like, I absolutely fundamentally hate that description, because it's like this like magical entity now. It's like, I want to go capture the unicorn and be a PM, and you're like, well, cool,
Yeah.
but like there's still a lot of grunt stuff you have to do. It's still a job, and you're coming out of undergrad, and you still need to plow through that. And so you can still go into tangential roles and long term figure out your pathway there. So that's the 7th piece of advice, is say like, you don't have to be a PM, you don't have to feel bad about not having PM. It could be anything, as long as you're saying, I have a long-term plan. You have your own long-term vision. I mean, you product manager yourself and say, here are the things I'm gonna do, and then you work your way. So that's step
Cool.
7.
Yeah.
It's this mythical, it's like,
I definitely understand what you're talking about. Like, everyone's like, wow, PM, product management, and there's like it's a niche. I'd say it's a niche, and at the same time, it's a glorified niche.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like, when they hear the position, hear the title, they assume, and I think they dream about what it means to be a PM.
Right.
But if they don't actually go through the day to day, they don't really understand what that really entails.
Right.
So definitely, for sure. So like he mentioned, it's really important to get some hands-on experience in anything related to a product on different aspects of it. You don't need to definitely be the leader, but you should play a pivotal part in whatever way possible. And like you said, it's a matter of emphasizing that through your cover letters, through your resumes, through whatever it is that you do, that you have that passion and that you really know about the product you want to work for.
Right. I will say that back to the cover letter and resume thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can send me a generic cover letter, generic resume. That's perfectly fine, and you still may get through the process. Because like there's the whole spray and pray sort of mentality. I'm gonna fire as many resumes out there as I can, which is, you're gonna do that. There's no way you can customize every. But for those companies or organizations that you care about the most, spend the time. If you come in and say, you're my number one choice, I love you, I want to work there, this is amazing, and then I look at your cover letter, and it's clearly one of those generic cut and paste ones, or like Control F, replace word, then I'll be like, there's a disconnect between the words you're telling me and the things you're doing. So I'm like, So yes, you're still gonna spray and pray, I get that, but for those ones that are most important, double down.
Awesome. That's some really insightful stuff, I think, for all the students, for all the people looking to break in. Take note of these things, write it down at home. Keep it in your notes on your computer, your laptop, phone, whatever. Like, these are some awesome, really cool insights. So it brings me to my next question. I know in terms of time, I'd love to chat with you more. It'd be really awesome. Like, this is a really great conversation. I want to get more into, for those who are not technical, as a product manager, you're working with some technological products. You're working on some software. You're working on some innovative things that require some extensive piece of technology, right? So what's your advice coming from a business, from an HR perspective in your undergrad and transitioning to technology? What's your advice for people who aren't so technical, who aren't doing their technical undergrad degrees, who aren't coding every single day? What's your advice to break into product management for those people?
That's a good question. I'm gonna tackle that one in a few ways too.
Sure. Like, I love the way he breaks it down. Take notes about that too, guys. The way you break down a problem, the way you break down a question.
So there's a piece that says, I talked about shades of product, there's different spectrums. So there are non-technical PMs and there's very technical PMs. So you kind of need to choose what it is you're interested in doing. And if you want to be a technical PM, you need a technical background. So I'm going to say it's very hard to break into that sort of role without any product experience. You could slide into it from a product role from a non-technical product role into a technical product role. So I'm just going to say doing that leapfrog without that technical experience is going to be hard. That's step 1, right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is finding the right organization and the way they fit. So one of the other reasons why I didn't want to stick around at Google at the time was sort of product was on my radar, and they want technical. Everybody needs a comp sci background. I don't have that. So it was immediately going to be incredibly difficult for me, even already being in the organization, to transition into that sort of role.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine, that's just not the right organization for me. So you have to pick the right organization where you can have impact, where they're gonna value your skill set. And then number 3 is then figure out what value you can deliver outside of that technical background.
Right.
So I again still have a very limited technical background. I understand the moving parts, but it forces me to rely on my team way more, which is great. That's why you trust teams, that's why you have teams.
Right.
But what I have to do is think through what is my value proposition and where am I filling in the gaps. So is it I'm going to be great at analytics, I'm going to be able to digest problems, or am I going to be great at rallying teams and bringing them together? What is it that you're bringing that you may not be able to bring from the technical side?
Right.
And then last but not least is get a cursory technical knowledge. You don't need to code, but you do need to know the moving parts.
Right.
So because to the whole asking why, to be able to ask why, you kind of need to understand a little bit. Well, you can still ask why, but you may piss off people if you're asking very bad whys, which is fine. So that would be the last piece of it.
Nice. So that's really, really interesting. So you said research and figure out where it is you want to work. If it's a technical company, sometimes it means that their products, you need to be really technical to operate and to have an understanding of how to innovate the product, right?
Well, there's technical PMs, right?
Right,
You're working
right.
on. You may be working on like we have a central tech org. They're working on, let's say, all the SDKs that plug into our products. Like it's very technical. The specs that you're writing are very technical.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the things that I design and map out are not technical. It's like let's super not technical. Let's build a wheel that spins every day and gives you a prize when you log in. I'm thinking like the most generic thing possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very technical.
Right.
Make a big wheel, spin it,
Mm-hmm.
yay. So that's why I'm saying technical versus not technical.
Interesting. So that's some awesome insights again for people at home. A lot of people, they think, wow, to break into product management, you need to know how to code, you need to know how to build all these things via coding or whatever. But there's obviously ways to work around that, and there's ways to work into that. Like, doesn't mean like going like all the way deep, but like just going through the surface to understand what your skill sets are and what value you can provide. I think, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, our lovely cameraman was a co-op with me.
Yeah, we have Daniel behind us in the camera. Yeah.
I mean, his background is not a technical background.
Right.
He is taking a minor, but at the time, I think you were 1 or 2 courses in. So
Right.
that is, let's call it non-existent. But again, like he had great logic. He thought through. He came well prepared for the conversations that we were having. So that's how he's sort of offsetting that lack of technical knowledge. Is a willingness to learn and ask questions and understand. So.
Right, and those things can't be taught, right? So like it comes as you dive deeper into whatever it is you do, like that genuine passion and interest for whatever it is that you're interested in doing.
Right.
Yeah. So how are we for time, Daniel? Okay. So I'd love to ask you some more stuff. Like we've talked about what have we talked? We talked about yourself, where you are now, what you're working on. Let's see, your advice. What else do you think I didn't cover? Like what can you think about in terms of product management, in terms of the industry, innovation and stuff like that?
Okay. Let me think. I'm just thinking about where do PMs go wrong? What are the biggest hiccups I see from a new PM? You don't start with a problem or an opportunity. I see a lot of PMs go straight to solutions. So that's a mistake, because by going straight into the solution, you're missing the breadth of what may be out there. So you need to spend a lot of time thinking through what a problem may be, or opportunity, but let's just frame it as a problem, and structure that out to say, what is it I'm trying to achieve? Again, you could frame it like, why am I trying to achieve this? But map that out and say, this is the problem, and these are the things I could do. These are the solutions that may work. Here are the hypotheses on why they may work, and then you can start to tackle those independently, instead of saying, this is the answer to my thing. Because what happens a lot is you pursue this solution, you're like, this is great, you get super tied up into it, you're like, this is awesome, it's the best thing ever. You build it, it comes out, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it kind of fixed the problem, problem, or like it had middling results, and it's all because you didn't take that time at the beginning to say, look, there are other options on the table. There are always other options on the table, and you need to be smart about how what you're building resolves that. So that is like the most common failing I see on a new PM, is doing that. It's going straight to the solution.
Cool.
Because we're all baked in to do ideas.
Right.
Like you think about your school courses. It's been a while for me, but a lot of the school courses are like, come up with an idea, create the thing, solve this singular problem. You're already given the problem. You just need to solve it. So we're like training ourselves to immediately go to solutioning, and we should be taking that step back and being the teacher, writing the problem set first. So that's, I think, almost what happens is you're just in that, like, I'm gonna fix it phase.
Right.
Take a step back.
So taking a step back and maybe even thinking about the why, like you
Right.
said, like he mentioned the book by Simon Sinek. What was it called?
Start with why.
Start with why. So always start with why. Then that will always help you to get to where you want to get to, even though maybe it might take a little bit more time, but it's worth it
Right.
before you actually dive in and put your head in all the way, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So we've talked about product. Let's talk about just like life in general.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, what are your hobbies? What are your interests aside from work? Aside from product?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 children, so that keeps my time. That's about it. I play endless amounts of games.
Nice.
That's, if I have free time, I play games. That's
Nice.
basically it. So my life now in approaching middle age has become pretty stable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
He doesn't
not-
look the
not-
age. Like I
not-
couldn't
not-
tell.
Not,
Yeah.
not super thrilling. I click into my computer and work from 7 to 9 p.m. I click off between 5 and 7 because I like to have dinner and put the kids to bed. So like it doesn't leave a ton of time to, I don't know, go out and do hobbies.
Right.
So that's how I frame my days, is just
Right.
putting family first.
Awesome. So 7 to 9.
Yeah.
Wow. So like I can imagine the amount of stuff you have to do. Like just as a co-op, just thinking about the stuff I have to do. Like when I go home and like you think about how much time you have before you can go to sleep and like trying to balance all your time. But from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so 7 p.m. so I click in, I came in here around 8:30.
Yeah.
So I'll leave around 4:45.
Okay.
And then I'll stop 4:45 p.m. to about 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And then I'll click back in from
Click
7
back
to
in
9.
from 7 to 9.
Or
Wow.
9 to 10 depending.
Wow.
But again, a lot of my job right now is meeting and talking to people.
Right.
So when I'm in the office, it's more often than not talking to people.
Right.
So I need a time slot to think and do
For sure.
well.
For sure.
So that's my time zone.
Wow. And like, does time fly? Like to put it in perspective, like when you're doing your work, do you get lost in your work?
I do. I mean, look. I know I said like the product management role gets glorified.
Yeah.
I personally love it. I think it is an amazing job.
Yeah.
You get to think about interesting problems. You get to work with interesting people. Every day is new, and so that's why for me time flies. Every day is a new challenge. Something different is happening, or I need to think about a new problem. So it's always keeping you on your toes.
Right.
One of the things I loved about management consulting is you always got a new consulting project. So same thing here, you get new challenges every day.
Right.
Right.
Challenges are awesome. Like they push you to expand your brain,
Right.
to learn new things and to really get a new sense of different stuff you never touched before.
Right. Cool.
Awesome. So Andrew, I think that marks the end of our talk.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having us today. I think this is really insightful for those who are prospective product managers who want to break into the industry, who want to learn how to up their game. These are all important stuff that they could take note of. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
so once again, this is UWPM, also known as Product Vision Club. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at theproductvisionclub.com. And until next time, peace.